Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Healthwise and I'm Dr. Tahira Shahid. We saw during COVID how people were running around for oxygen. They were so desperate to find an oxygen cylinder, an oxygen mask, just so that they could catch a breath of air, because that's how essential oxygen is for us. But there is something that carries the oxygen to different parts of our body, in our blood, and that is what is hemoglobin. And what happens if this very carrier, this very transport of oxygen is impaired? That is what we are here to discuss today, because today is 8th May, which is celebrated everywhere as the World Thalassemia Day. When we say celebrated, it is so that we might, create awareness regarding thalassemia and encourage more and more people to come out, donate blood and help people that are suffering from thalassemia. Let's move to our guest, hematologist Dr. Atika Malik. Thank you so much for joining us. First things first, what is exactly thalassemia? It's a genetic disorder, it's a hemoglobin disorder, but how do we know what it is? How does it affect us?
Thank you so much, Dr. Tahira, for inviting me over here. Thalassemia is, as you know, is a genetic disorder, which means it passes from parents to the children. So, as we know that red blood cells are the basic component of our blood system. This red blood cell contain a pigment called the hemoglobin.
The red thing.
The red pigment, yes. Yeah. It is actually that this hemoglobin becomes dysfunctional. The genetic mutations it affect this hemoglobin, and what happens that this hemoglobin is causes the instability of these red blood cells.
So we know that there are two kinds of these thalassemias. They keep mentioning thalassemia major and thalassemia minor, and then there's something called alpha and beta. What is the difference between these?
If we divide it on the basis of the chains of these hemoglobins, these are called the alpha thalassemia, that is the alpha chain is actually affected. If we talk about the beta chain, that the beta chain is affected. In Pakistan, the prevalence of the beta thalassemia is more as compared to alpha thalassemia.
So which is more dangerous or fatal?
Both the kinds are so dangerous, but we have to categorize them according to the severity, which is we divide them into thalassemia minor, that is called the trait. That is not a disease. It means that you are carrying that trait. And that is thalassemia major is actually, in thalassemia intermedia is basically the basic pathologies.
So both parents need to be carriers of thalassemia for a child to receive.
Yes. If out of two, if in one couple only one parent is thalassemia trait, it will not affect the child. If both the parents, like mother and father, both have thalassemia trait, then there is 25% chance out of like 100% that one of the child contains thalassemia major. Still, the 75% chance is that the other child will not have the thalassemia major.
So how far in life can you actually diagnose thalassemia? Like how old is the child when you know that the child has thalassemia? What are the symptoms that he or she exhibits?
If we talked about thalassemia major, the child will represent around 6 months to 1 year of age, and the symptoms are basically pallor, and he will be anemic. He will lose his milestones, like he's achieving. He will be normal up till 6 months of age, but after that he will start deteriorating.
So it's a delay in all the developmental milestones. He's not talking, not holding his neck straight, not being able to do the normal functions, and extremely weak and extremely pale and white. And he also has some sort of bone deformities, and for example spleen enlargement or liver enlargement, those things.
That is thing that the blood transfusion is actually the food for him. If we will not transfuse him with the blood, that is actually the red blood cells, not the whole blood, the red blood cells, then slowly over the time his liver, his spleen becomes starting enlarging.
So when we talk about transfusion, so these patients need transfusion for the rest of their lives. How frequent is this transfusion? And if they don't get a transfusion, is it going to cost them their life?
Yes, exactly. It depends upon it varies from babies to babies. Like like they have to be transfused around from 3 weeks to 6 weeks, and as they grow in the age, this transfusion requirement increases because they are dependent on the blood transfusions for the lifelong. Plus one important thing I want to mention here is that they also need the iron chelation therapy, because if we are transfusing them blood over the time, they have started accumulating iron in their bodies. So we use the medicines called the iron chelators.
So what is hydroxyurea, for instance? What role does that have?
Hydroxyurea has not the role in thalassemia major. It has a role in thalassemia intermedia, and it is linked somehow with the genetic mutations. The mutation called XMN polymorphism, and only in those patients we give hydroxyurea.
So basically, it's only blood transfusion that helps them, or
No,
or
not
are there any
only
other
blood
things?
transfusions. The definitive treatment, the curative treatment is actually the bone marrow transplant. But for that, that patient should have a matched sibling donor, plus he should be in good health status. He doesn't
And
have
what is the ideal age to get a bone marrow transplant?
at least before 5 to 7 years of age.
And who can be an ideal match, for instance?
His sibling.
The sibling.
Basically, yes, sibling donor.
And it's not necessary that always you find a sibling that would match.
Yes, then we have to go for the non-matched sibling donors, but that is very rare. Like,
and what is the success rate of a bone marrow transplant?
The success rate, if we talked about that, if the patient is perfect for the age group and he's perfect in all his morbidities, then the transplant is like 80 to 90%. But if as the child grows in more age, like after 16, 17, this transplant rate decreases to 30 to 40%.
So basically, both are very difficult options, getting a transplant and then also blood transfusion. What we can actually do is, or rather encourage, is pre-genetic counseling. For example, before their marriage, or if it's a cousin marriage, or before they're even thinking of having a child, will some sort of studies help them find out if they both are carriers and not to get married, for instance?
Actually, Dr. Hira, prevention is better than cure. It fits in that disease very well, because the countries like Italy and Greece, they have controlled this thalassemia because of this preventive programs. So the public awareness, first of all, then the screening. The screening comes on 3 levels. First of all is the screening, pre-marital screening before getting married, which is not in our culture is not very fit. People don't know about that. But if after getting married, before having a child, that is called the that should also be done. And if if there is an index case, we have to screen those families specifically, because the carrier rate in normal population is 5%. But if we talked about the index cases, the extended families, that carrier rates reaches to 30%.
Exactly. And in our part of the society, there's no concept of this screening, and they think that if one child is born faulty, for instance, in this regard, then they keep having more children just in hope that they will have one healthy child. Whereas you need to tell them it's not going to happen that way. There's an equal chance of every child being born with that.
And I want to mention about the prenatal diagnosis, that if it is done before 18 weeks of gestation, that is in the first trimester, the procedure is called the CVS, chronic venous sampling. That is specific like this. There's a fatwa for there that if the baby gets diagnosed with thalassemia major, we can terminate the pregnancy after 18 weeks of gestation.
Okay, so when we talk about thalassemia and the need for blood, it has been extremely difficult, especially during the times of COVID as well, when people were not going for blood donation the way they were usually going, and these thalassemia patients were actually suffering. So what can you tell us about, awareness, creating awareness regarding, help for thalassemia patients, which societies can they actually go to and resort to for these blood transfusions?
Yes, there are so many at national levels, at the regional levels, there are so many NGOs and the hospitals linked blood banks which could help the thalassemia patient, like Thalassemia Pakistan Federation. There are so many NGOs working under their Pakistan Thalassemia Prevention Program, and every hospital setup, pediatric setup, that has the volunteer donors there which could help.
When we talk about blood donation, today also happens to be International Red Cross Day and Red Crescent Day, and that society plays a very important role in blood donation as well. When we talk about blood donation, how can everybody help these people of thalassemia by donating blood? We know that there are a lot of benefits of donating blood itself. What are the benefits of donating blood, and how how frequently can a healthy person who has a normal weight donate blood?
Blood donation is very healthy. Like you can donate after 4 months interval. Like you can donate 3 times in a year. Blood donation is so healthy because if you are, it's like you are the blood is going out of your when you donate the blood. After that, your bone marrow, which is the factory of your to produce the blood cells, it produces new blood.
Right.
So it's
so it detoxifies your liver, improves your circulation, also improves your heart health, and especially after Corona, a lot of people were complaining of, you know, stasis and clotting. So it's
Yes.
actually going to help you even.
Yes,
So even if
exactly.
you've recovered from corona and you're donating blood once they've screened you for everything, it's actually going to help you prevent heart attacks and prevent the
Exactly.
sluggishness of the blood, etc. So this is really good. Who are the people who cannot donate blood, for instance? What underweight people, sick people? Who are those who are not candidates for
There are
donating
donor
blood?
different criterias. There are different criterias. Like when there's a donor come for in the blood donation center, we screen them. First of all, we take their history. Like some have the age above 60 years and below 18 years, they cannot donate the blood. And the pregnant woman, they cannot. Menstruating woman, they cannot. And those people who have the hepatitis B, C positive, they
Right.
cannot. They are deferred. HIV, they are deferred for the lifelong.
So how important is blood screening? Because many a time, you know, even for thalassemia patients or even otherwise, our blood is not screened. The donors
Yes.
are people who are actually selling their blood, and then their blood is not screened.
Yes.
And what are the dangers of such transfusion?
Yes, the blood should be screened for all these transfusion transmitted infections called, because if you get these pathologies, the severeness of the disease increases because of these transfusion transmitted infections. So there is a need, there should be public awareness about these pathogens, and especially in thalassemia patients, about the transfusion transmitted
And
infections.
it's said that in thalassemia, a lot of the thalassemic patients are immunocompromised. So do you think they're ideal for vaccination? Should they get the COVID vaccine or should they not?
It depends upon, it varies from patient to patient. Like they should get vaccinated, but like in Pakistan, because most of the thalassemia people are in a child age group.
Okay, so they're not
that's
getting
why
vaccinated
we are not
anyways.
getting. Yes.
So we have to actually think about others, where we think about giving charity, giving alms. It's very important that if we are healthy young individuals, we regularly donate blood as well. Not only will it create some kind of noble instinct in us, we will have helped another person, we would have saved their lives, but we are also actually ensuring our own health. Talking about thalassemia and other blood disorders as well, what about anemia? Because, you know, a lot of people here get breathless very easily, and now they think, oh, maybe I have COVID, but they don't know that it could actually be anemia.
Yes.
So could you tell us about this most common iron deficiency anemia, for instance, in our society?
Yes.
What are the symptoms other than just, you know, getting breathless or feeling tired, for instance?
Yes, anemia can be, if any person feels breathlessness, shortness of breath, you just have to go to the lab and you just have to get only one test, that is a complete blood count. That will tell you that you have you are anemic or not. Then the next thing is that you have to go for the iron profile also, which will tell you that either you are suffering from the iron deficiency anemia or some other kind of anemia. But iron deficiency anemia is so common in our society, like even in our teenagers, because of the improper dietary habits.
Right.
Like we are not very fond of meat and vegetables and green leafy vegetables. So we have to focus first of all on the diet thing. Then the other cause can also be you are eating properly, but there might be some bleeding disorder, might be some malabsorption disorder. You are eating, but it's not getting absorbed inside your body. So we will have some other tests for that. We have to involve the gastroenterologist also to screen that iron deficiency anemia. And in the old age group, anemia, the cancers of the GIT, they can also present with the anemia.
So with anemia, we also have all sorts of brownish patches on the face, which is a very common concern with women, and they keep coming for all these bleaching creams and, you know, whitening creams without realizing that the cause of their melasma and chondrosarcoma is actually iron deficiency anemia. Yes. And a lot of kids like to eat these, you know, like to munch on sand, for instance,
yes.
or you know, want to have
they develop
something.
The craving for that. This is
well.
also one of the sign of that they are actually having the iron deficiency.
The reason
anemia.
I asked you this was because when you have anemia, you take iron-rich foods, and the iron-rich foods you mentioned were, for instance, liver and what else, apple and spinach for instance.
Yes.
But in a thalassemic patients, you have to restrict iron foods because
yes.
you don't want iron overload.
Yes.
Rather, you suggest that they start taking folic acid, right,
yes.
and folate foods. Could you mention some folate foods as well for the thalassemic patients, and also tell the importance of folic acid in, for example, pregnant women or women who are, you know, about to conceive?
Yes, folic acid is actually another global. We categorize the anemia into different types. That one is iron deficiency anemia. The other one is vitamin B12 and folic acid deficiency anemia. Folic acid is actually essential for the synthesis of the DNA component of our cells, all over our body cells. So if we get deficient of folic acid, our cells starting getting deteriorated, or they are not manufactured properly. So folic acid is, if we talked about the food, it is present in the green leafy vegetables, and vitamin B12 is present in the poultry, in dairy stuff, and especially for the pregnant females, it is important to improve your dietary requirements, but you have to take your folic acid supplementation also, because the neural tube defects for the first 3 months of the gestation trimester, that your baby is actually, his brain is developing with the help of this folic acid. So you should have to take this. If you are talking about thalassemia patients, that thalassemia patients are for the lifelong on the tablet folic acid. That is just a little tablet of 5 milligram. It is important because their cells are continuously breaking. The lifespan of the cells is very reduced as compared to the normal population. So to improve the synthesis of the red blood cells, to provide, actually we are providing folic acid to the factory of the blood cells, to the bone marrow, so that they can make. So
basically, bone marrow is the where the red blood cells are produced, and then the spleen is where they are actually broken down.
Yes.
And when this breaking down is a lot because of the abnormal looking hemoglobin and the abnormal beta chain and alpha chain, and these spleen gets enlarged. So what do you do for an enlarged spleen, for instance?
First of all, for the spleen, if it get enlarged and starting, the patient becomes dependent on the transfusions more frequently, and his platelet counts and all that stuff is decreasing, all 3 counts are decreasing, then you have to go for the splenectomy. It's a procedure, but it's also a life-threatening procedure, like you have to vaccinate the child, because it is one of the component of the immune system of our body.
Exactly.
So you have to remove it very carefully. We're taking all precautions with all indications. We should go for that.
So what is Hydrops fetalis and this, they keep telling this?
Yes, it is one of the kind of alpha thalassemia. Hydrops fetalis is that there are 4 alpha chains in Hydrops fetalis. That baby is not able to make even the 1 alpha chain. So that is called the Hydrops fetalis. Mostly the death occurs inside the womb of the mother or just after birth.
Okay, when we're talking about all of this, what is the importance of leukopenia in COVID? It was, said that in COVID that this is leukopenia, the white blood cells falls.
Yes.
And then how is it different from what leukemia is when the white blood cells are more? Just a brief introduction to all this so that people are aware when they get that blood report and they see hemoglobin and anemia and leukemia and leukopenia, they would understand what it means.
Dr. Tahira, actually, what is that? When the COVID is diagnosed with the RT-PCR or with the antibodies, it is very important. It is very important for the general public to get aware, to get these basics tests done, like the CBC count, like C-reactive protein, ESR, ferritin, procalcitonin. People come and ask why you are going for these tests, because these tests have some importance. Not only these tests guide the clinicians about the treatment, but it also guides them what will the prognosis of their COVID, because the COVID is such a versatile disease. It starts from just loss of taste and smell, and
then it progresses to complete organ damage.
Yes, even in the very starting days, the patients are feeling very well, and over the time, because they are not following these basic things, leukopenia, when the patient has leukopenia along with other symptoms like shortness of breath, this leukopenia guide the clinician to treat that disease actually like HIV disease.
Okay.
So we give the drugs which we have given in the HIV patient to these patients to treat that patient.
So you're treating them like an immunocompromised
patient.
All right. So wait, this is okay. So this was all about leukemia. So before we leave, what is your message to everybody out there regarding thalassemia awareness, regarding how to prevent thalassemia and how to help thalassemia patients, and induce in them, actually inculcate in them the spirit of donation, blood donation?
Yes. as a healthcare worker, we should spread the message at individual level and at the national level that just get done your basic test, CBC with the hemoglobin electrophoresis. That is a basic test. Even if one of the couple out of only one parent get diagnosed with thalassemia and trade, we have to get check the other person. If it is he or she is normal, then it means that there is no chance of, he is just a trait, he'll carry that trait, there is no chance of getting that disease. So we have to screen the people, we have to get the screening done before the marriage or before conceiving a baby, or if we are conceived the baby, prenatal diagnosis, and we have to screen those specifically the index case families. That is
thank you so much, Dr. Atika, for joining us today. And you heard it, even before you're considering marriage, it's very important that you both get screened and find out through hemoglobin electrophoresis if one of them is a trait carrier or if both of them. And if both of them are the carrier, then they should not consider having children. And if one of them is a carrier, it's okay because it's a recessive trait. And if then you do get a child with thalassemia, you should avoid having another one because you might be posing a risk to them. And living with thalassemia is a very difficult challenge. You need to register yourself with different organizations so you have access to blood transfusion, healthy, safe blood transfusion regularly, and so on. You should also be able to donate blood regularly to save these thalassemia patients, because every drop that you donate actually saves a life. Thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.